Welcome to Flipping Staff Development to Maximize Your Use of Time. My name is Brad Jacobson, 612 Principal at Ashland Greenwood Middle and High School. Do you have a high percentage of your staff that have after-school activity commitments? Are you looking for ways to provide differentiated professional development? Are you trying to find ways to empower your staff to own their own staff development? Do you need to maximize your own time? Or do you need an idea for sharing info without a dreaded meeting? Our goal for today will be to learn about the model that uses technology and staff expertise to flip staff development in a building, and while also reflecting on your current staff development delivery model. This would be the point that if this is not what you expected it to be, you are welcome to exit. We'll only talk about you after you leave the room. The agenda for today will be the data to support the need, examples of some of the meetings that I have used as an administrator and also my staff have used in peer training. And I'm going to show you at the end very briefly how to build a meeting, flipped meeting using blendspace.com. This is my staff, 32 teachers, and again, these numbers speak for themselves, and this may be very common among the folks in the room here. Some other background is each year I end my school year when I do summative meetings. After I've met with each staff person that last month and a half or so of school, I send out a Google form. I used a Google form this year, was my first time. It worked fantastic. And I gather anonymous information from my staff, asking them about positives, negatives, evaluating me, areas that I can grow, and give them the opportunity to tell me what they also want and what they need in terms of staff development and support. And my survey shows, probably not a surprise to anybody in here, one size does not fit all. You know, even if I remove, like you do with all survey data, you kind of take out the most glowing and you take out the most negative and you kind of find that middle. Our staff needs differentiated training and development, just like we would expect them to do with their students. You know, what am I doing to meet their needs as a staff member? So at this point, I'm going to give you each just 10-15 seconds. I want you to think about, to yourself, how do you deliver important information to your staff? Now, don't misconstrue this here. You know, we do have meetings. I'm not an anti-staff meeting person. I have meetings. We have trainings, scheduled in services, small groups, curriculum groups, the whole 9 yards. One of the things that makes us a little bit unique as you look at this, some of the first data as far as what it would look like if I met with the staff once a month for 30 minutes. Our district has a second group this year in the Marzano Academy, which is a cooperative effort of our ESUs in Nebraska. And that would included several days of training on the Marzano teaching model, the teaching framework, the 9 elements, or the 9 design questions and the 41 elements. So 8 people in my building have been trained in the Marzano model. And on every trip to and from, we had a lot of discussions and also at the meetings about how do we bring this information back to the rest of our staff? And how do we share this in a manageable form with the rest of our staff when clearly we can't recreate a staff development session. But again, 8,640 minutes if that were just me face-to-face with my staff once a month for 9 months. So what I did is I had those 8 folks and my 4 social studies teachers. I asked them to create a 25 to 30 minute session of training or development for their peers, and they have to offer it 2 times, once in the morning and once after school. And then the teaching staff, we shared all that information in a Google form again, and the teaching staff then got to sign up for 3 of their choosing. So that would be part of the differentiation, is they got to choose. Every presentation was recorded using Google Hangout. I collected a sample of every handout or PowerPoint that the staff members used, and I put all those things together in these BlendSpace presentations. And I think what you'll see a little bit later is how powerful that ended up being, because the staff just didn't go to the training, they actually went back to those BlendSpace opportunities and use that technology many, many, many more times. In 1 month of peer-led Marzano March Madness, I called it March Madness. I'm a basketball fan. I started this process in March, thus the title. You can see, again, 8170. If you recall a couple slides ago, me, one time a month, 30 minutes a month, was 8,640 minutes. And in 1 month of my staff, the peers, leading peers, it was 8170 of training. And that's with the minutes that they spent on BlendSpace, which it actually will track for you. So, and then, again, the priceless part of, I've engaged now 12 of my own teachers to be leaders as far as staff development. I'm not sure you can put a number on that. Again, another chance for reflection. Brain research will tell us that if we do not reflect, think, or store some ideas, store that new information somewhere in our brain every 10 to 12 minutes, that we likely will discard it. So if this is something that is starting to feel like it's important to you, or something that you want to make some changes on, again, this is another opportunity to reflect on these questions. Does your whole staff always need the same professional development? If the answer is no, then what have you done to create options to differentiate for those, to meet those specific needs? I'll give you a little time to reflect on that. So here is what my staff offered. That's the real brief titles of what each group offered. And we ended up with 6 training opportunities. And you can see what this means is then the views are how many times the BlendSpace training, the lesson, it's called a lesson, was viewed or opened, linked into it, okay? And then it also gives an average time. And this is where I came up with the minutes. So, this is the average time someone spent in that BlendSpace in those trainings. Now, if you recall, I only had 32 teachers in my building. The largest group in any one of those sessions was 16 people. And so I guess I'll ask a question of the group. What conclusions might you draw from this data, or what questions does it create? Conclusions might be, and there's some other information that would help possibly understand this better. Staff that attended the session, obviously, I guess I would draw the conclusion they went back several times to review different parts, the video, the handouts, the PowerPoint, whatever it might be. Staff that did not even attend the session because they went to 3 other ones, they more than likely still went in and viewed some of these when I sent them out. By the end of it, I was hearing presenters that were referencing their colleagues' trainings that they had attended earlier in the month. So they would say things like, if you really want a good example of this, you should go watch Mr. Johnson and Mr. Smith's training on scales and engagement, whatever it might be. So again, an unintended consequence that became very powerful. Also, you see too that are in the 40s. You have goals and learning targets, 40 views, and high expectations was 44 views. Interesting about learners and even teachers as learners. Those 2 did not have a video. In one case, because the operator, which was me, the Google Hangout operator, didn't check one of the correct boxes and it didn't record. Okay. In the other case, I think I had a sick child and was called away and I didn't have a chance to get somebody else to record it. So the 2 that did not have a recording also had the fewest views. So again, it's that video that probably attracted people to that BlendSpace lesson, even more so than the content possibly after they were posted. So I thought that was an interesting piece that we could apply with our teachers to their students. This slide has absolutely no purpose other than to show off my kids. I'm lucky with my wife Stacy to have 4 boys with a span. The big one is 16. The littlest one is 5 months. Tyler, and that's Tate, and Kale is my 4th grader, and Dane is my 2nd grader. And everybody always has that one kid that you say if he was first, he'd have been the only kid. That's my Dane, which my mother tells me he's just like I was. So I'm not sure if that's a compliment yet or not. But anyway, very proud of my kids. Next thing on the agenda, I wanted to give you some data to back up what I was preparing. I wanted to show you some examples. So at this point, as I share this, if you move to you need to stop the video and move to one of the other panes in the blend space, and one of them would be an example, a staff example use of scales. And you can just start the video and watch, a couple minutes if you'd like, and their video will be pulled in there. I might pull in several of their things, but just gives an example of the good information that came through. And it's not a professional video. There was no editing involved. You'll see in this particular one, it takes me about 20 seconds to get the Google Hangout working, and I just have the camera on the staff member as she's waiting for the rest of the group to get seated and get started. So there's kind of some awkward time, but we didn't spend any time making fancy editing. It's just raw video. And occasionally, if they walk away, get too far away from the microphone, I've even lost some sound. But for the most part, they worked really well with just a laptop nearby. And that's all we used to record them, was just a laptop with a camera. This is Miss Kylie Penner and Mr. Dan Baronic. I don't even know if the video will go long enough to see Mr. Baronic, but they worked together on this particular presentation. It was the most popular one as far as number of views. Another example is my own. Last July, I shared with all my staff the August opening in-service video. And what I did there is I actually created 3 videos, kind of an opening video, and then that directed them to go to the PowerPoint. And the PowerPoint was full of things like work hours and how do you get a sub, and how do you check out, and how all those things that we feel the need, like we have to go through because they're kind of part of contracts, and the things that you have to go through that are policy that you have to review with your staff on a yearly basis, that just makes us all go mind numb, and our staff's looking at us going, really, I have work to do. I just sent that out in July. And then also included in that was a little bit of an independent reflection activity that it was about. One of the things we're working on in our building is how we treat low expectancy kids. We have a failure rate that I'm trying to bring my failure rate down, and one of those things is those kids are low expectancy kids, so to speak, and trying to find out how do we treat low expectancy students in our rooms. And so it was a real self-reflective activity that I challenged them to do, and I felt like it would be a very difficult thing to do if we were to do that in a large group, because they had to ask some pretty hard questions about to themselves and really do some self-study and self-reflection. And I really thought it would go better if we didn't. Now, the trade-off is, I really can't tell you if they all did it with great fidelity. Okay, but I sold it as, if we do this, we're going to have, when we get to the staff meeting, we're going to do some things that are interactive, and we'll keep that staff meeting shorter and more focused on the things that they need. And I based on those things that they needed from the survey that I had gave them. So always tying things back together if I can. A teacher, just like any of the rest of us, don't want to feel like their time's being wasted. So if we can tie things up for them and connect things, I think you're going to get a lot better performance on the other end of it. So there's an example of my August opening in-service video and PowerPoint, if that's interesting to you. I also, in October, we had a meeting with my staff about, again, continuing to look at that, reducing the failure rate and raising those expectations. And we started to we're working on examining individuals' grading practices and assessment plans. And so really getting to that point where it reflects student performance, not just a average of a whole bunch of points that we collect over a couple month period. By doing that, I pulled a couple of Rick Wormeli, or Wormeli, however you say it, videos, and the activity was a note card, plus minus question mark, plus about things that you like that Wormeli says, minus the things you dislike, and question marks of things that you just don't quite understand. And I asked them to turn those in. I also asked them to email me or write it on the card if they were prepared, one thing, and I called it my one thing, that they would commit to doing differently with assessment and grading. I compiled those lists, and I posted those lists, even the harsh ones, okay, even the ones that when people say things that, like, well, what are we doing now, that kind of thing. The negative ones, put them all on a list. So I put negatives on a list, and I put my one thing on a list. I didn't collect the positives. I guess sometimes, and maybe I should have, but I was really trying to focus on the negatives and the questions, and then my one thing that teachers are willing to do differently. Then in November, the first Friday in November, I followed up with what I call, again, a flipped Friday. I included a video, and I included the 2 lists, And I had categorized the list into different types of concerns, and those were my categories, not anybody else's. So I asked them in the video to review the lists, choose how they would consider themselves. So maybe one of them was they just didn't understand the concept of standards-based grading or formative assessments. One of them was they understand it, but they had questions about how it actually looks. So again, I just had some categories, and they got to pick where they best fit. Based on what they picked, then I had 2 video options. One from Dr. Marzano about standards-based grading and writing scales and rubrics, and one from Rick Wormeli, another one from Rick Wormeli, so they could choose either one. And then I ended that session with a quiz. You can put a quiz on BlendSpace, which really was a ticket out. It wasn't a right or wrong answer. It just guided me to what they needed again next. What kind of feedback am I getting from these processes that we were in? You get some of the feedback I got from that. Things like, I don't know where I would categorize myself. I kind of feel and I said, well, then, watch both. One video was 7 minutes and one was 4 minutes. You're not going to waste your time with 11 minutes listening to Dr. Marzano or Rick Wormeli. Okay, so that was one of the very few questions that I got. Again, the bad part is, when you do stuff like this, you don't know who has and has not. But at the same time, that the thought of getting the choice to do things, I think if you look at the views of the other things, when they have choices, they tend to do what's asked of them. So what I learned from that quiz was I just asked statement questions. Standards-based grading. It's okay. I still have questions. I don't like it. I love it. Things like that. They just got to check one box. So I found out that 75% of my staff is in that frame of about standards-based grading. That it's okay, but they still have some questions. Oh, okay, fair enough. 50% of my staff prefer that peers and administrators are their resources before we would use the experts. They would much rather hear from each other and even from me, shockingly. Maybe they meant my curriculum director, I don't know. But they would. So half of my staff, so I got to think about that as I prepare things in the future, that half of my staff would rather hear from their peers or from me. Eye observation is a tool that we use as part of our evaluation process. And there's a resources section on there that we have showed them. I haven't really worked with it much yet. I found out that 60% of my staff had used eye observation resources prior to this flipped meeting. And I found out that 95% had only viewed the Wormeli videos that I shared with them. So in that regard, I think I found something new. They liked it. 75% thought it was okay, and none of them had ever heard of Rick Wormeli, which tells me I can use him again because he was good. They liked to listen to him, and he's very much to the point and concrete with what he talks about. So that's just an example of the feedback that I got that helps me, and then I will use that as I start another one. I will use that information to guide. When I say, hey, when I gave you that quiz, this is what I found out. This is what you told me that you liked, and so we're going to do some more, for example, maybe peer trainings. I will end with, I told you I would show you how, and this is kind of scary. It's so simple. If you have a Google domain account, if you're a Google school or you have your own Gmail account, and you have your own Google Drive, it's even easier. But basically, you're going to go to www.blendspace, BLENDSPACE, all one word, .com. You will then click the sign up button if you've never done it before. Then you'll have a choice of whether you're a teacher or a student. You are going to click I'm a teacher. And at that point, now you'll see the login screen. And if you have a Google account, there's a button that just says log in with Google account, and if you click on that, you'll just enter your Google domain sign in. If you have your domain already open, because maybe your calendar's open or something like that, it will literally take you right into BlendSpace. If you don't have a Google account, it's just as simple as filling in your name, your email, and a password. I just made one the other day. I just called it test. I think test teacher, and I just made something up. And it takes it. There's no steps. It doesn't email you a password that you have to go back in. It takes you right into it. So it's very, 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 very easy to set up a BlendSpace account. Again, today our goal was I wanted you to learn about a model that uses technology and staff expertise to flip staff development in the building. and while also reflecting on your current staff development and delivery model, if you could. I would like to share this meeting with you. I've created this meeting as a blend space, and I'd be happy to share it with you, which includes the PowerPoint and includes me talking throughout the whole thing. I didn't record it today. This was recorded prior. But if you want me to share this meeting with you, my email address is now on the screen. If you email me and just ask for to share the Kearney presentation with you, then I will get into my blend space and just click share. Then it's just like a Google Doc again. You click share and you type in an email address, and it sends it to whoever needs it, be able to open it up and look at it. So again, any other questions that you ever have, you can feel free to call me. I'm on Twitter. I'll pump Twitter here a little bit too if you've never been on Twitter, and some of the educational chats. It's fantastic. It's a great way to network, and it's a great way to learn. So it's my pleasure to present today to you. I hope that you were able to reflect and get something out of this, and I would love to hear from you if you have any more questions. Thanks, and have a great weekend.